2022. This is the November 16, 2022 Board of Finance regular meeting. Call the meeting to order, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic in which it stands, one nation, under God, individual, and liberty and justice of all. Sorry, catching a cold here. Okay. All right. Hopefully my voice holds out. Next agenda item is public speak. Are there any members of the public that want to speak? It doesn't look like we have anybody. You confirm that, Eric? Looks good.
Does not appear that we have any members of the public.
Okay. We'll go to agenda item 3, which is additions and deletions of the agenda items. Does anybody have any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the town administrator's report. Eric?
Okay, so you all got the written report, so I'm just gonna touch on a few of the same highlights that I touched on with the Board of Selectmen, and then I'm available for any questions you may have on it. So there's a bunch of RFPs, request for proposals, that will be going out shortly. We're about to finally get the one for the HVAC upgrades to the fire station out. I've also spoken to the Board of Selectmen at the last meeting, and I'm talking to CIP tomorrow with the intention of submitting a RFP for HVAC upgrades to the town hall. That'll be basically 3 parts. Part number 1 is installation of ductless split systems to replace the existing wall-mounted units, which are not that old, but a number of them are problematic. It will offer lower total energy usage, and it will also be a lot quieter and hopefully easier to live with. The second part of that would be replacing and doing a conversion from oil to propane. As you know, there's no real indication that oil is going to decrease in costs anytime soon. So it seems propane has been financially a better fuel source for a number of years, and that trend is accelerated in the last year. So the goal will be to convert just the burner of the boiler downstairs to propane, and then at the same time replace the heating system for the community room, the heating and cooling system. Those are both at this point 18 years old. We've had a lot of problems with the cooling system in that building. So it kind of makes sense to do it all at once. And the goal would be to put back in a heat pump with a propane furnace, what's called the dual fuel unit. So you'll use it as a heat pump as long as it's economically viable to do it. When it drops super cold, it's more efficient to convert over to propane. Part of the reason we want to do that is we know we need to do some work down the road on the electrical panel in the main furnace room, and there's enough code violations in that room that without getting rid of the oil tank and the fill tank lines, we're going to really struggle to do it. So this kills a lot of birds with one stone and sets us up for getting our backup power in the town hall addressed. So that's in terms of like what's coming down the pike in the next 6 months or so. The other really good bit of news, which I also shared with the Board of Selectmen, is that the TRIP program, which is a state funding program that's meant to fund road improvements in rural communities, was originally put out with only allowing it to be used on roads that were major minor collectors and above. And I went on a really intense lobbying effort with CROG and also with Council of Small Towns, and also with going directly to the program administrator for the program and showing him data that the towns they were aiming this program at couldn't actually use it because they set the program conditions such that the smallest of the towns could not benefit from it. So they did just announce Monday that they've retooled the program and we're now going to be eligible. So that's a lot more work for me because it means we got a grant submission due at the beginning of February for a TRIP grant, but it offers the chance to get a fairly significant amount of road work done and 100% funded. So that will be the plan going forward, to do a reconstruction probably of Hendy and Skinner, not all of Hendy, but the section, the bad sections of Hendy in all of Skinner. So that's that. I'm also, in fact, I was doing a little bit of lobbying tonight just for this meeting, but I'm providing testimony to COST, which is Council of Small Towns, for the legislative agenda. And I intend to reach out to both of our new representatives for the town, our new senator and our new representative. And there's kind of three things I'm lobbying for. Two are road work related. One is to change the town aid road formula, because right now it favors bigger towns and disfavors smaller municipalities, and I don't think that's fair. The second thing is to revise the LOTSIP program to make it line up with the federal guidelines that it's supposed to be lining up with, which would allow some spending on rural roads. Right now, we're not eligible for LOTSIP funding. And to put it in perspective, the Capital Regional Council of Governments, which is about 35 towns, spent $38 million last year of LOTSIP funding, or awarded 38, and that's a typical year. So put it another way, there's roughly $1 million of roadwork funding a year per municipality that Andover is not eligible for, even though we're a member of the organization or a member of the COG. So that's that. Those are the major things. Does anybody on the Board of Finance have other questions related to my report?
Okay, thank you, Eric. Hearing none, I guess we'll move on to the Finance Department report. You have comments to make on that?
I don't. I did not get nor did I really ask for a specific report from Cheryl, since we only talked to her a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. Well, we have the reports in the packet. I didn't personally see anything that was major cause of concern. I think there's a couple of accounts we've had 100%, office supplies over the town garage, stuff like that, but it's a few $100. So I think we just need to manage that type of stuff somewhere else, right? So
correct.
Not halfway through the year yet, so.
Right. So what I did, one of the things we have not been showing the Board of Finance is the revenue information from Edmunds. And obviously you as a board should be seeing the town's revenue. So the problem is that we know we're switching to QuickBooks. So it doesn't make sense to burn the capital and the manpower, or woman power in this case, to put all that into Edmunds when we're a month away from switching away from Edmunds. And we know we're having to put it into the QuickBooks to get the revenue set in there. So what I did is I gave you the two things that have the most bearing and provide 95% of all the town's revenue, which is the money we get from the state. So you had a list in there of, going back, what all the revenue that the town has received from the state, town aid road, ARPA, pilot, municipal stabilization, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that. And then I also put the tax collectors information in there. because that's the other half of the revenue puzzle, the money we take in for taxation. So the good news is we seem to be where we should be in terms of getting money in from the state. I did get a notification 2 days ago that, or yesterday, that the refund check for the road work for the steep grant from 2020 should have hit our account today. We got the notification from the state. So I haven't verified that it's hit our bank account, but the state said they've sent it. So that's good. I also put in the check register, so you can see pretty much, a 1 month snapshot of every check the town writes. So if there's other things you want, let me know and I'll try to provide them until between now and when we go through the transition, which should be roughly a month from now, maybe a little less.
Yeah, I had heard what you said both in the previous meeting and also that Joanne was there too, would have heard it in Board of Selectmen meeting, but we're still on target for December 1st for that conversion.
That's according to Cheryl, yes.
Okay. It'll be an impressive accomplishment to get there, I think. Okay. Any questions for Eric? None on that. Okay, we have no budget transfers. Is that correct, Eric?
That's correct.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7, which is old business. Any information on the audit status?
No, just I did have a conversation with Cheryl last Monday. Cheryl came in and we spent a couple hours. She had some more information she needed to get from the town. So I was able to provide that. We were able to find the information that she was looking for there. She did say she's identified a series of checks that either weren't captured in the original audit or or were accounted for differently by when Jeff McGuire summed up the check register and when the auditor did. So she was trying to work through that. So she has a clean starting point for the reconciliations for last year, but she's already inputted all the data for the reconciliations. What she's really doing is making sure she's got an accurate starting value. And then she felt the reconciliations would go fairly fast since the info was there. It's just a matter of you need the correct initial starting value before you can do it. So that's kind of the status on that.
Okay. Any questions for Eric on that? Okay, we'll move on to 7B. So in the packet is this is the review, the updated draft of the purchasing policies. And basically, this is the same one that Diane had revised and sent around to everybody. And I think we were generally in agreement that the policy was solid. And I don't want to mischaracterize it. So, if anybody has concerns, speak up. But there was still a question, and she had it on, to see the page. Page 7 and 9, which is, she had renumbered this also, so it's helpful to do that. 433 looks like subsection DA. That might need to be redone in terms of numbering, but there was a question about whether if somebody or if the town administrator or whoever was doing the evaluation on an RFP had selected other than the lowest bid it says the lowest bidder is not recommended to the Board of Selectmen. The situation should be reviewed by the town attorney. If after review by the town attorney, lowest bidder is not recommended, a detailed letter accompanying the evaluating body's recommendation must be submitted. And then it says more flexibility is allowed for design build contracts. So that's kind of not clear. But I think Diane's question, I think it was a valid one, or somebody's question that she had recorded here was, do we really think we need to talk to the town attorney if somebody was to make a recommendation for other than the lowest bidder. So I don't know if anybody has any other input on that policy. I do think it would be in our best interest to kind of get this passed and biased, but I also don't want to rush it if anybody has any concerns or wants to reevaluate it.
I mean, my commentary on that particular question is I do think it's maybe excessive to go to the town attorney if we have a situation like that. You know, that's what that's kind of what we're here to do, isn't it? As the board, we can consider that. And if we think there's a good justification for not selecting the lowest bid, you know, I think we can do that. You know, going to the town attorney just adds, I don't know, I worry about it adding so much complexity that it'll drag the process out terribly. That's sort of my concern.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm not sure it's a legal question, as long as, you know, such as, you know, allowed by the charter, et cetera.
I mean, either we have the authority or we don't, right?
Yeah, well, this actually is, you know, isn't necessarily I don't know that it's a Board of Finance thing. It's you know, it's something that if Eric went out to bid for an RFP for work,
Right.
you know, for the heating and cooling system for the town building, for example, and then he got 3 quotes that were determined responsible, and, you know, one was $50 more than another, but it's through a proven vendor, et cetera, that he had a higher level of comfort with. I think it's reasonable that that wouldn't need to go to the town attorney for review, but I do think it does make sense that a detailed letter accompanying, you know, as it says, a detailed letter accompanying the evaluating body's recommendation must be submitted, because they need to explain why they would choose something other than the lower bidder.
Yeah, if for nothing else, we want to document why, you know, in case anybody has to go back later and figure out what happened.
Yeah.
We can
And
document
then
that. We can pull that letter and say, okay, this is the decision that was made and why. Yeah, that
Right.
makes sense to me.
And the Board of Selectmen then makes the final decision, I think, in that case, and then, you know, that's on the record, right? Joanne, did you have
That was just my only thought, as long as we, you know, with the 3 bids and we don't, and the lowest isn't chosen, just that there's good reasons presented to the board or whatever. That was my thought too. And I thought, like Rob, it might be excessive to have to go to the town attorney as well. That was it.
The only other thing I think that was an open question when we were talking about it last time, when we had Diane with us, was that, you know, we still had this concept of the preferred bidder thing,
Yeah.
preferred vendor thing, sorry.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we ever really nailed down what we want to do with that. What are the parameters of that? How does that actually work? Because I think it's a great idea, but the devil's in the details on that. And how do we write it up? And, you know, I was, after our
Yeah,
last
I
meeting,
agree.
sort of
I know that
TBD,
I'm
we're gonna table that, we'll come back to it, but we haven't done it.
We haven't done that. Yeah. I know I'm one of the people that raised an objection, because I think that needs to be defined. That being said, I think we can do it outside of accepting this purchasing policy, but it needs to be in place, you know? So.
Yeah, I mean, we can't do that and then like take 6 months to finalize the other bit, right? Because then it's in place and then it's referring to nothing. Hi, Eric.
Well, I think actually we can. And the reason is, you know, we just don't use any preferred bidder option until we have an actual preferred bidder list and policy. I mean, you know,
Right.
I look at it as a clause that kicks in when it actually is fleshed out and you all have agreed, right? Because I can't just arbitrarily do it anyway. I still have to ask you and the Board of Selectmen as a board. So, you know, if it takes us 6 months to get a policy that we're all in agreement on, then it takes 6 months, and between now and then, we don't exercise it.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
That
I
makes
think
sense.
we would probably take exception to you submitting something to a preferred bidder without a preferred bidder list. It's been approved.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And I forget, did we ask, I can't remember, Eric, during our last meeting, whether we asked if you had specific thoughts about what we should put, like if you had your own thoughts as to what in your mind would be a good set of criteria to evaluate a preferred contractor. I mean,
Right,
you're the
I
one
mean-
who often does the nuts and bolts here.
Right, so, I mean, honestly, I go back to what I did before I was in the public realm. And I was just working kind of as a, managing a lot of contractors. And that is, you get a series of contractors that are capable of performing the job and that you're gonna have problems with, or you're not gonna have problems with. So you have a comfort level of dealing with them, that the town, they're gonna provide good service, their prices are reasonable, and you're not gonna get screwed. I mean, at the end of the day, the biggest problem the town has had in the past with going to RFP and taking the lowest bidder is we've gotten some really shoddy things done by not being careful about how we did it. And so I do have a series of contractors that I know, for instance, if I need electrical or plumbing or things like that, I know who to talk to that's gonna treat us fairly. And I don't have to babysit, and I know the work is gonna be done correctly. So that's what I would think about in terms of a preferred bidder.
I get that. What I was saying is, if you had thought, because we have to, that's all great. But when I think about sitting down to type up a set of criteria for a policy,
Right,
like that's difficult to translate. And that's what I'm trying to get at. If,
right,
are there a certain number of jobs they've done for us that should be a threshold? Oh, they've done at least 2 jobs for us. Something like that, just as a starting point, so we can start to kind of create a framework here that is flexible enough for your purposes, but is still some kind of formalized process other than Eric trusts them.
right. No, and I get that. And
Yeah.
I don't have it, I have not had the time to sit down and really flesh it out. But I also understand that until such time as I do, and we go back and forth with the board, that's just off the table until such time as that has been done.
Okay.
I mean, we
Isn't
may
this-
have to go to RFP to select a plumber and select an electrician and select a mason and go through all the trades, and essentially pre-vet, and have one selected and on standby, which is what an awful lot of towns do. And I started to do when I first took over this job, but I frankly just ran out of time. I mean, the problem with doing all that and then establishing a baseline contract with each of those companies is that it just chews up an awful lot of time.
I think we can certainly, I think Eric makes a good point. We can probably still implement the policy, and then we do need to follow it up at some point with the process to establish that preferred vendor list and then do it. But we can, as Eric said, we can give ourselves some time to do it, because
Yeah, keep it on the agenda
utilize
as
it.
old business, as just to kind of have it recurring as an old business. Hey, where are we on this? So that we keep it on the burner.
Yeah, preferred
Makes
vendor
sense.
process or something, yeah.
So are we basically all agreed that we should delete the town attorney bit? I mean, I'm on board. Joanne's clearly on board. Mark, you sounded amenable. Linda, do you
Yeah.
have any issues with that?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Louise?
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Then why don't we do we need to quickly vote on that and just
Yeah,
take that,
so
make that
what I
change?
would say is that we would change the language, and Eric, if you want, I can share my screen if you give me the power.
Certainly.
I can show the language.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
you
is
should have
A. I was looking at the numbering, Mark, and I'm not sure. It's a little unclear to me whether that actually keys off D or not. Anyway, sorry, that's
Yeah, it's a
that's
little, it's not clear.
I
'cause
think
you
it's
have
a new
4 through
section.
3, A, B, C, D, and then A, B, C,
But
D
then
again, so we may
I-
need to look. at the
Yeah,
numbering
like-
at some point.
I think it's a different section and it's not really that much of a problem, but I mean, also, there's no harm in just switching it to numbering or something
Yeah.
to make it clear.
So what I would suggest is that if we could have a motion, we could change the language to say if the lowest bidder is not recommended to the Board of Selectmen, and then we go directly down to this, omit this line.
Yep.
And go directly down to a detailed letter accompanying the evaluating body's recommendation must be submitted.
Right, so I will move to go ahead and delete from this policy the bit that Mark has highlighted specifically right there, redlined it. That the situation should be reviewed by the town attorney, and if after review by the town attorney, lowest bidder is not recommended, comma, that all should come out. But, and then everything else remains. So that's my motion. Hopefully that's clear.
I think it is.
I'll
Anybody
second that.
want- Who is that, Louise?
Louise, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing
just-
none.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna add that originally we weren't gonna have this meeting, so, I mean, I think it's okay that we hold it one more month. I mean, I like that we looked at that, and I just was gonna add, for some reason, it's not gonna happen now, but I thought that maybe Diane and Eric were gonna get together about that part on the preferred vendors, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I know that's not. gonna
That might have
happen.
been on our next steps list, but
That
obviously
was,
that's.
yeah,
no
I
longer-
thought that was the conversation, and clearly Eric has so much on his table as far as administratively, I guess, so I can see where you can't be writing policies all the time with everything else that he's asked to do at the town, so I get that. All right, that's all. I think we, can look at it and, move it forward as we talked about.
Okay. Does anybody have any further comments on this specific change? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. So I guess the only other thing that I would suggest is we can do one of two things. If anybody has any other motions for changes, we can make those, make a motion for that. We can make a motion to adopt the purchasing policy as it stands, or we can continue this on to our next meeting after people have had a chance to look at it a little more. If you feel more comfortable, I can send out the revised version with this language changed. And then we can just vote on it in the next policy unless, Eric, I have no problem doing that. I had intended to kind of send this out earlier, but I wasn't sure if we'd.
Okay, can I ask a question
Yep,
about the policy?
Yep.
When I was reading it on page 4 of 9, 3.2, and down where the dots are, and even up above a little bit, it says, those required to meet a public emergency is defined by the town administrator and reported to the Board of Selectmen at its next scheduled meeting. Shouldn't it be brought to the Board of Finance too? I mean, if he's making expenditures, it just says Board of Selectmen.
Hmm.
I felt
think-
left out.
I
that's a really good catch, Linda, and I tend to agree.
Oh,
think
yeah,
the only
and in the
downside-
paragraph,
What this is saying that he still, Eric still has an opportunity to make the expenditure, but then he needs to report it. And it should be to both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance,
Right,
right?
so there's
Right.
nothing in this provision that would, because we're gonna add in that he needs to report it to us, it's not gonna delay him, which I think is the key, right? As it's an emergency situation. So I agree, you're right, good catch.
and also in the paragraph up above where it says the supplies, commodities, etc., it ends the same way. It says, not anything not approved during the budget process must be brought forward to the Board of Selectmen for approval. And again, we get left out.
Well, I think that the Board of Selectmen's the executive body, right?
Right.
So,
I don't know. I understand, I can see it both ways,
Mhm.
but it should be brought to the Board of Finance's attention.
Yeah, I mean, the other one is very straightforward because it's literally telling us. This one is approval. So it's another hurdle
Yeah,
to get through. But again, just gut reaction is we should be involved. Any new initiatives, policy, or procedure changes that were not approved during the budget process must be brought forward to the Board of Selectmen. I'm trying to, maybe I'm slow tonight, but I'm trying to envision this scenario here. Like what that's getting at. What are we talking about?
so we're talking about public bidding, the public part of the public bidding process. So I think part of what this is getting an approval for the Board of Selectmen, like a pre-approval to even go to RFP, to public bid.
Eric, are you trying to get our attention?
No, I'm simply waving because the lights are on motion sensors. And one of them went off, which means in about 2 minutes I would be in darkness if I don't
I
wave.
thought you were over there like, I got a comment. Okay.
No, you'll
That
see me
happens
do
to
that
me in my
regularly.
office about three times a day at work, so. yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mark. That makes it a little clearer for me.
You know, I tend to agree with Linda that it at the least we should, I'm okay with the rest of it as is, but I think that, yeah, it would make sense for that second bullet item to be amended and say, report to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance at their next regularly scheduled meetings.
Yeah, let's add that for sure. So before I make a motion though, I guess we need to kind of decide, because if we're gonna change both, then we move to change both. Are you saying, Mark, you're okay with leaving the other bit, the approval bit, just Board of Selectmen as the executive board of the town? That's sufficient? I don't know. I'm torn.
Yeah, and supplies, commodity, service, construction listed below will not require sealed bids, but do require the town administrator, finance director approval, any new initiatives, policy, or procedure changes that were not approved during the budget process. Yeah, again, I think that it would not be a bad idea, would be, generally Eric's informing the Board of Finance about any financial issues anyway, but, we could so state that, because basically what they're saying is anything in that bullet point list it's not approved during the budget process, so.
I think Eric wanted to make a comment.
Eric?
So 2 things. I totally agree in the first paragraph where it says any new initiatives, policies, or procedure changes that were not approved during the budget process must be brought forward to the Board of Selectmen. That should be Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. I totally agree with that. Where it says those required to meet a public emergency is defined by the town administrator and reported to the Board of Selectmen at its next regularly defined
Sorry.
regularly scheduled meeting. The one thing to keep in mind is I almost wonder whether, where I'm starting to wonder is what happens when we declare a public emergency of some sort. Because a public emergency is declared by the first selectman, but then I'm given the power essentially to carry it out. So I'm wondering, those required to meet a public emergency. If it's a true public emergency, there'll be a declaration. And then I hate to say it, but even the regular Board of Selectmen is locked out for emergency, that is really a first selectman acting through the town administrator in a true town emergency. Now,
Well,
maybe,
yeah, I'm not sure I agree, because what I think the intention of that bullet point is saying is that it says explicitly to meet a public emergency as defined by the town administrator. So what my guess is what this is trying to do is to give you as the administrator the authority to, bid a major, or go to contract for some major, I don't know, sinkhole falls into in the road, and you've got to take care of it like now, without going to some kind of sealed bid process that would stop any kind of reconstruction for 60 days.
Right.
And that wouldn't be, I think in that case, a public emergency, capital P, capital E, that you're talking about, right?
right. Yeah.
Also-
No, I see your point.
I was just gonna say, the other change we could consider is whether, do we want to lock it in as regularly scheduled, or what if they are willing to have a special meeting to speed things up? Do we want,
Well, it's just a reporting thing. This is just a reporting thing. This Eric makes the expenditure based on he's defining this as a public emergency. He goes ahead and makes the expenditure bypassing the public bid process because it's
Right.
got to happen fast. And
right?
he just reports it to us later.
I guess, yeah, from the way it's worded, I wasn't, I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just
A little
wondering
weird. Yeah.
if it's worded well enough that it's clear that the reporting can happen after. Also, this is totally minor, but the line 2 above that, those furnished by a monopoly utility, I think there's supposed to be a bullet point in front of that.
Yep.
It's
Good.
just
Yeah,
weird
you're right.
and
Yeah.
kind of out of. I keep looking at it as like a header for the whole thing, and it's not.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a good catch too.
It's driving me crazy. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, that all makes sense to me.
So it sounds like we're talking about a couple of changes here. Is changing this text here to say, and the Board of Finance to notify. And also to add a bullet point, that's formatting, but also add approval by the Board of Finance to anything that's not part of the approved budget process. So does anybody want to make a motion to make those changes?
I'll make the motion to add the Board of Finance to both of these entries where Board of Selectmen is right now just the Board of Selectmen. We're going to add the Board of Finance, and also, of course, to just fix the formatting error and stick a bullet point in front of those furnished by monopoly utility.
Second,
I'll second it.
thank you, Linda. Any further discussion? Okay, let's take a vote on that change. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Okay, any further points here? Linda, you got the eagle eye. You get the eagle eye award tonight.
I just felt left out.
No, that was a really good point, I think, so.
Yeah, it's just, at some point, it's good to have lots of eyes because different people pick up different things. That was a good one.
Okay.
Thank you.
But
So-
so do we want to try to pass this thing tonight, or do we want to kick it to our next meeting in its final form once it's?
Well, I guess I would say if anybody has any reservations about approving it tonight, if they'd like to look through it again, Joanne kind of expressed some concern maybe there. I don't see any reason we couldn't just continue this to the next meeting. I don't think it's absolutely critical we do it now, but I'm open to alternatives as well.
Joanne, did you in fact want to
I
kick it one more meeting?
always feel, I'm a really good proofreader as well, and I really don't feel like I devoted any time to it. I really thought we were gonna be singular focused tonight, so I know we weren't, which is fine, and I should have looked at it more, but I I didn't, so I don't really feel comfortable passing it.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could just
Works
wait
for
one
me.
more. We weren't gonna have a meeting tonight originally anyway, so,
Yeah, that's fine by me.
yeah, thank you.
What's up, Eric?
Mark, can I just make one more comment? If you go back to page 5. Go down just a little bit. Where it says at a minimum, all bids shall consist of technical and cost components sealed in separate envelopes. I objected to that the last time and my objection still stands. We never get bids. You know, everything is in one sealed envelope and that's the way it should read.
Okay, yeah, there's a reason for that. Often having done a lot of proposal work, et cetera, RFP work in the previous job. And I don't think it applies here, so I'm okay with that change, but typically what happens in a large RFP process, or what often happens, especially with a large municipality or state or a county or something like that, is that you have a technical evaluation and then you have kind of an objective scoring that's separate based on cost. So they'll score it technically on the merits, and then they'll have a separate scoring system based on cost. And those two are often done independently. And what they often don't want to happen is they don't want the evaluation committee to see the cost. They want them to evaluate the submittals on their own merit. And so they're not biased by, paging to the end and looking for the bottom line, saying, okay, lowest bid, so there's a reason for that. I think it doesn't necessarily probably apply in our process here. So I'm okay with combining that, but I just wanted to point out that there often is a rationale for that type of thing.
Fair, but I also don't want to write something in a policy that is just literally not what happens.
Not
And
gonna
then we're
happen,
just
right.
constantly violating the policy.
Yeah, we're not writing $13 million contracts, or at least very often here, right? So
Right.
I
Why don't we-
tend to agree with you, Rob and Eric, from a practical perspective. It probably makes sense just to frankly strike that, unless we need to say, leave the sealed envelope thing in there.
I mean, I'm fine with striking the whole sentence.
Well, I think we probably want it sealed.
Oh, okay.
Eric, what's your thought?
So we generally require, when we do an actual bidding or an actual RFP, we require sealed bids.
Okay.
We have a specific procedure for opening them. That's, essentially signed by everybody that's present at the opening. So that
So we
was the
could-
question.
So we could potentially just write this as, didn't mean to strike that
In a
out.
sealed envelope, yeah.
In a sealed envelope, right?
Yeah. Let's do that. I'll just go ahead and move that we change that line, that the ending of that sentence to in a sealed envelope. And that way we have it singular, which seems to comport with what we're actually dealing with typically.
Okay,
Admittedly, since I haven't been involved in these sorts of things, the whole sealed envelope thing was just out of left field for me. I get bills at work in PDF form and an email, so.
Right.
Like, what is going on?
part of it is to try to prevent the opportunity for somebody in the chain of handling these things to
Right.
open it up, secure any confidential information, and give another bidder some type of
Inside info?
inside info, so you're somehow harming the competitiveness of the bid. So
Yeah,
it
no, that
does
works.
make sense to keep it sealed.
Okay, so that's my motion, which just change it to singular.
Okay, you have a second?
Second it.
Okay, Joanne, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, thank you. Motion passes. Okay. Eric, anything else
Nope.
for anyone?
All right, why don't we push this to, we'll bring this up in old business next meeting?
Agreed?
Okay.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Okay, as long as nobody has any objections, we'll move on. Okay, current status of staff searches for finance department. Eric, you want to give us a quick rundown?
Well, I would tell you that I was anticipating today posting that, but the Board of Selectmen has asked, because of compressed schedules, to wait and do it basically right after the holidays. So that's okay too.
So January.
Yes, the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause with that is, because the actual finance person is not the treasurer, but the actual finance person is a union position. And I'm a little nervous about the union busting our chops over having somebody that's, even though it's the same person that was their union person, because they're now part-time, they're now not a union member, technically doing that job. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if I got a little bit of hot water with the union over it, because it has been a while, but if that happens, we'll deal with it.
All right, so that kicks us out a month and a half before that gets done. But if that's what the Board of Selectmen chose to do, all right.
It's really hard to, advertise, like they were talking about, interview, get really qualified candidates at this time of year. That's
Yeah,
really
that's
the
true.
whole, with the holidays, you lose the whole Thanksgiving.
Right.
Just myself, we're having trouble filling so
Yeah.
many positions. So it would be tough. So I think it's kind of more to do with that too.
Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they'll advertise at least, Eric, right? Once the job descriptions are finalized, it can maybe get advertised in December. Is that what they were thinking? I didn't know.
I would push for that, for advertising it, but
Right, to get it out
I think
there.
the thing you have
Okay,
to do.
that's what I was worried about.
Yeah,
We have to be ready to go. The one mistake we've made recently,
right.
in the last 6 months of putting out things, advertising of them before we were really ready and fully set up to interview. And time again, the candidates were done and dusted by the time we called them to bring them in to interview. They had either interviewed a bunch of places already and they canceled the interview, or they interviewed, and by the time we made them an offer, they'd already taken another offer. So I think we have to be prepared with the committee fully set up when we go to do this, so that 2 weeks, a week and a half after we post, we're starting to interview and we're ready, to make a decision.
Just putting it out there, if you ever need anyone on your interview committee, I don't know if I'm even allowed. I mean, it's things that I'm familiar with, in accounting and all that kind of thing. If you needed anybody, I'd be willing to serve on that committee, but I don't even know if I'm allowed to bring that forward, but since we're discussing it. I totally agree with you that, right, when you advertise too soon, people have interest, and then if you don't have the process ready to move forward, it doesn't pay that way either. Got it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you need, in today's day and age, you need to be able to act. I agree with your line on that.
Yeah,
With this market, as you can't wait.
right. Okay.
Okay, if there are no further questions for Eric on that item, we'll go on to 8, which is new business. We don't have any on there, and we didn't add anything during our discussion. We'll go on to item 9, which is, of course, the resignation of Diane from the Board of Finance. Well, you all know what a loss that is. I don't have to tell you. And Jeff expressed it during the Board of Selectmen meeting, and it's really unfortunate. But people have to take care of themselves and do what's right. So certainly she's going to be missed, no doubt about it. Already is. So as I mentioned in the email that I had sent out, by definition, we're required to follow Robert's Rules of Order barring other procedural procedures we've adopted. So that makes the vice chair automatically the chairman in that case of the resignation of the chairman. However, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, we're gonna treat it as provisory and elect a new chair and vice chair. I do think it's important that we have both. Simply put, people have obligations and something happens, you want somebody to quickly be able to step in and take over meetings and make sure that the town's business continues. So I think that it's important to have that. And one item that's not on here too, which we probably should have had on here, and my apologies for not, I don't know that I actually saw it, but it's, we really should probably just touch on the replacement mechanism for a new Board of Finance member. So we can just chat about that. It's not a decision process necessarily, and we can kind of address that separately. But I do think it's part of this topic, if you will. It does fall under the resignation bench. We didn't really miss that. So I guess our first order of business would be to discuss or just select a new chair and vice chair. I'm
Mark,
yep.
I know there was a letter of intention from someone. Are we going to discuss?
We can. So I guess what I would say is I had asked, Carol Lee called me, the town clerk, and asked about advertising the position because we have to post it. So what I told her is, again, in the interest of getting casting a wide net and giving people the opportunity to think about it during a busy time with holidays included, I asked her to go ahead and post it in the River East Bulletin through December 2nd, I think is that Friday. So she's going to have recurring postings in the River East Bulletin. The first one was in Friday's bulletin. And it's a simple statement. It's also on the town website saying that anybody who's interested in serving, please write a letter of interest to the town clerk. And we did have one person, actually, even before that was posted, who submitted a letter of interest. So I think that what we do have to do is obviously wait for some period of time until the posting date is closed, which I think is the 7th. And then we as a board would review the letters of interest. If we only have one, then it makes the decision easy. If we have 8 or 10, it makes it a little tougher. But then we need to make that decision in a public meeting. So Eric, you and I had chatted about this when we met the other day. But we can go into executive session to discuss the selection of the next member, but then the public vote or the vote to choose the next Board of Finance member would have to be in a public meeting. So that's how that process goes. Again, we have 60 days in order to do that. Or then if we don't, in theory, the Board of Selectmen could make a selection and choose the next Board of Finance member. I don't anticipate that that's going to be the case. Hopefully, certainly we already have one letter of interest. So, if we get more, I mean, certainly we will have a candidate in that pool that we should be able to select. So that's kind of the process as I understand it. Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't.
I can just speak to it from personal experience. I think I'm the last person who was put onto the Board of Finance originally to fill a vacancy. Or
That
was
would
you?
be
It was
me.
you. That was you. Oh God, I see. There's my memory for you. But in both cases, I think it was just, we brought you before a meeting and we heard what you had to say, and then we voted you on. That's what happened with me too. So totally agree that we should wait and see if we get any more interest. Having a candidate already is great because worst comes to worst, we have somebody who's thrown their hat in the ring. I can say that I did reach out to the DTC people just to say, hey, everybody, FYI, we have a vacancy. If anybody they're aware of that wants to put their name in, let us know. So if I hear anything, obviously I'll encourage that person to submit something, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, it's actually a good point. If any of you know anybody you think would be a good candidate through, through your social contacts or whatever, then I think that's, networking always helps and people like to be asked. Or maybe I'd say they're more willing to serve if they're asked, and you think they'd be a good candidate.
Yes.
One thing I do think, and I'll just make the comment, is that I don't know if any of you looked at the letter of interest we had. So it was very basic. It just had a statement of interest along with the person's name and contact information. So what I would suggest is that when, prior to the time we make a decision, maybe what we should request from any interested party is that they write a kind of a personal statement, give us a little bit of information about their background and their interest in the position. That way, we just have that ahead of time and we can take a look at it. And I don't want a formal resume, but just a paragraph or two that kind of explains who they are and what their interest is, and maybe how long, we have to ask them how long they live in town, but just, to get to know them a little bit, that'll kind of spur questions or, kind of our opportunity to get to know the candidate during the meeting without taking a lot of extra time. I think that helps spur that. So I think that would be appropriate to request that from people who have expressed interest. Do you guys agree with that idea?
I was actually going to suggest that as well, because it was a very basic request. And possibly, can that person that be appointed, can that person actually take over as vice chair or board chair if they have the appropriate experience?
They could. I mean, it's just up to the
Okay.
board to decide who they want, right? So
Right.
Joanne, you had your question up to your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna add the same thing, that I think more information is good. Anytime you're applying or wanting to be part of something, that it should come from the person wanting to express, a little bit about themselves. Clearly, we're not gonna name names at this meeting, but we know this person had interest in this in the past. I mean, that's just without saying a name. So I think all of us have a little history, but I think moving forward, part of, like you said, explaining the process, it's always good. Just like, I review job applications all the time. Anytime, I don't care. And even myself, if I was going to apply to something, even if you know me, I'm still going to give you the full load. It just looks well. So I think that's good, getting the information. The other thing I was just going to add, since we're kind of on part C, I think we're explaining the process. We move to that right now, is, oh gosh, what was I going to say? Explaining the process. Yeah, I think recruiting is a good thing and it is a good tool, but also people that just find out on their own, really show an interest in the town, really are involved. That always says a lot to me as well. I think
Yeah, someone who clearly wants it.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Who's really got the interest, right?
attending things and getting, so that would show me if I, saw people. So let's hope, though, we're a very small town. Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to just clarify something. I was wrong. I got behind in my emails, and actually, apparently, we do have. I don't know if this happens to be the person who already submitted their interest, but apparently, the result of my request when I emailed around to the DTC folks that we had multiple interested parties. So we'll see. We've gotten one. We may get another. So. Just
Okay.
FYI.
Yeah, I haven't. I've only seen the one from Carol. So
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there may be another coming. I'm not sure. I'm just
Okay.
saying that, there was a response and I just missed it until just now when I went and searched my email. My bad.
All right. More interest is good.
Yeah,
All
agreed.
right. All right, I guess I can stop sharing. There's nothing necessarily here you guys don't have already. So that being said, I think we can we'll just have to wait and see what we have in terms of our interests. But as long as everybody's in agreement, what we'll do is, I think as we get close to that date, we'll just kind of see what we have for interested parties, and then we'll reach out to them and and request that they share kind of a personal statement, providing a little bit of their background and explaining their interest in the position, and that'll just give us a better basis on which to discuss it with them and have them talk to us when the time comes. So. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing here. So, all right, on to the 9A, which is to elect the new board chair and vice chair. You know, this is as simple as making nominations and voting. So go ahead, Joanne.
I would like to nominate you, Mark, to be chairman of the Board of Finance. I think you've done a great job in the past as our leader, and I would like to nominate you.
And I'd like to second that.
Oh, thank you.
If you're willing to serve, sir.
I am. It took a little bit of the heat off when Diane was taking care. But you know, as I stated before, I mean, I'm gonna have a little, maybe I have a little more, I have a lot more flexibility and availability in my time now as opposed to what I've had over the last couple of years in some ways. So I
Very
appreciate the confidence. You know, again, it is primarily an administrative position and largely, which just means you're moving the meetings along and trying to make sure you're following procedures. So, you know, it's an equal vote. Everyone has a vote. In fact, often you know, on larger groups, the chairman doesn't actually even vote. And smaller group like this, it just makes sense because you have to be there as a tiebreaker often, although it doesn't really happen in this committee so much, or in this board. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I will abstain. Okay, I guess the motion passes. Thank you. All right, does anybody have a nomination for the vice chair? Is anybody willing to be the vice chair? Even on a temporary basis.
Do it. I mean, I would consider it, but it depends how everyone feels about that. I didn't know if anyone had a strong feeling of wanting to come in and be the vice chair, so.
I'll second the motion.
I
It's not
mean,
that
you know,
hard.
yeah, I mean, it's to be the backup for the meetings, and then, well, as we just saw, if something were to happen.
Yeah.
Step in.
Or, you know, and it's even if, even if it is something like where the chairman doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be a resignation situation or something like that. I mean, if somebody's unavailable due to, you know, some other, you know, commitment, then it's good. You just need somebody to have this secondary filler. Okay.
I would nominate Joanne since she's so willing.
I'm fine with it. So wait, let's actually, I don't know if that was a motion or not, but I'll move to make Joanne vice chair. Let's just formalize it. Anybody got a second for me?
I'll second.
All right.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All
I
those
abstain.
opposed? Any
All right.
abstentions?
I guess I'm abstaining.
Yeah, you probably abstain when
Kinda
you're in your interest. It's generally an
Absolutely.
abstention. So,
Mhm.
okay, motion passes. Thank you, Joanne.
Welcome.
Okay,
But you can't miss too many meetings, Mark. No, kidding. Just joking.
oh, speaking of which, no, yeah, I'm just. All right, very good. Any other discussion on that topic? Now, the next one we had there is the procedure for selecting a new chairman. Eric, do you know what that was there about? I didn't. You're on mute, by the way.
I think you just wanted to talk about what had to happen and what we really needed to do. Once Diane resigned. I think you basically already covered that.
Cover
so-
that, yeah. Okay, so it probably should have been the other way around, but
Right.
okay. Well, yeah, just so the procedure, and there's a procedure for selecting well, there isn't really a procedure for selecting a chairman per se, because that's by definition, it's already done, but then we decided that we'd go ahead and elect it. But for selecting a new board member, is that maybe what that was intended to be?
Maybe,
Okay,
very possibly. I
Okay.
wrote it a whole week ago, so.
okay. All right, but I think I covered that, and they said it is available in the charter if anybody wanted to look at it. I think section 208 covers that area about vacancies of elected officials. I do want to make sure we do a good job at this. When I was placed on the board, it seemed a little bit too informal for my taste. The outcome was I was placed on the board, and that's fine, but I just think we need to make sure that we're fair and open, et cetera, about it. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't anything untoward, but I just want to make sure that it's done professionally, and I think that we'll do that. Again, just referencing back to the charter to section 208, we have the 60 days to do it. What I think will probably happen, or what I would propose that we happen, I mentioned this in an email, is that what we would do is accept the letters of interest. And then what we could do is either then go on to make a selection at our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is currently December 28th at 7 p.m. What my preference would be to do that a little sooner in a special meeting. I wouldn't mind unless we have urgent business to take care of, I wouldn't mind canceling the meeting on the 28th just because it's in the middle of the holidays. I personally have a little personal travel back and forth that makes it a little complicating. And plus, I'd just like to get somebody on the board for that meeting, honestly, even if we do hold it. So my suggestion would be that we currently, I think it says in the announcement that we'll be accepting letters of interest through the 7th of December, which is a Wednesday. And then what I would propose is that maybe we hold a special meeting the following week some point. The 14th, Wednesdays tend to be better for people, I think, in general. So the 14th might be a possibility. It would just be likely a one topic meeting just to select the new board member.
I'm okay with that. That date I think should work for me.
I could do that as well. I think that's great. If we could keep it a one topic, unless there was urgent business, that would be good. Just
Yeah, I think so. We just do a quick, and hopefully it would be quick. I don't want to shortchange the process, but I don't think.
No, but one topic would,
Yeah,
like,
to keep it focused and.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Should that be a public meeting like we did when you were there?
You mean in
Or-
person?
Yeah,
It's a really good question, Louise. There's a lot to be said for talking to somebody in person. So,
Illnesses are going, like that's right before the holidays, and sorry, being in person just brings up the whole COVID, get sick before the holidays, and I had to miss Christmas with the family last year just because of family members. So I just want to throw that out there with the in-person meetings.
it's
Just
a
after the
fair-
holidays, I'm all
fair
good,
point.
once I see my family.
Well, I
but
think we can,
Whatever we have to do, I guess.
yeah, I think we can decide that separately. It doesn't, we don't need to decide that tonight. Let's kind of see where we are. Honestly, if we have one letter of interest, I don't know that we need to sit there and have some kind of in-person meeting. I don't know that that's going to add any value. If we have 3 or 4 people who look like strong candidates, then I think we might want to do that, but we can decide. It can be a hybrid meeting. It can be virtual and in person as well. So that's what I would suggest. And we don't need to decide now. We don't even need to set the meeting now. That's something that your chairman could just do on an ad hoc basis. The only thing is that we have to give sufficient notice and post the agenda ahead of time. And then the other thing we can't do at the special meeting is probably most of you remember is a special meeting, you cannot change the agenda. So we can post a meeting, but once that agenda is posted, you cannot change that agenda. The agenda is what it is. So we cannot add topics, that night, just due to, freedom of information and participation, public participation requirements.
So that fits with a tight meeting, so
Yeah,
it kind
What
of
date was
dovetails with what we were just talking about.
I'm sorry,
date
somebody,
decided
go
upon?
ahead, Louise.
What date was decided upon?
Well, the 14th was proposed. I mean, we haven't it's officially set it. But I want to obviously set a date that works for everybody.
I mean, that week definitely works a little better for me. I could do the 21st. I don't think that there's any clear conflict for me there, but I'd rather do the 14th.
Yeah, 21st is not great for me. And the week before, we still have the posting open through the 7th. So I
Right.
don't want to do, and I'll be traveling in Europe that week, so it would be tough for me, although not impossible.
I think unless somebody has a clear conflict on the 14th, why don't we go with that date?
Yeah, I think it makes the most sense. And even if we can't get everybody there, I think it helps. Okay, any other discussion regarding your replacement of the board member, Diane, who unfortunately had to resign?
I just want to
Right.
publicly, I know we already gave Diane her just due, but I just want to personally say, I've learned so much from her and she's become a friend. I really, I'm gonna miss her and really appreciate all she brought. And it was a pleasure serving with her and just want to give her her just due. She's a great person. Yeah. And I just wish her well though. I
Yeah,
want everybody
absolutely. I do wish her the best.
So
Yeah.
I wish her the best.
Thank you
She
for
was
bringing that up.
great
Yeah.
help and bringing me along too. So thank you, Diane. You will be missed.
Maybe we'll see her back again someday.
Right, right.
I was gonna say, if it wouldn't, we can always hope that
That's right.
we'll have her back, but
All right. Thanks, John. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move on to item 10, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from October 26th. Does anybody have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Louise, thank you, Louise. Anybody want to second that motion?
I can second them.
Okay, Joanne seconds. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none? Yeah, Linda?
I abstain.
Oh, that's
I
right,
did
you weren't
watch the
there.
movie, but watch it, but I wasn't here.
Okay.
I just was gonna ask-
It's an interesting point. I wonder if you could still approve them based on the fact that you watched it in video. Okay,
I don't know.
Legally and technically, even if you abstain from a meeting, you can still approve the minutes.
oh,
You don't,
okay.
you're not obligated to, it's a courtesy and most people do, but you're not under any obligation.
Yeah, it's just are you in a position to effectively judge the minutes would be like anything else, right? Okay. Okay, so I think we can let it stand as is though. Yeah, Joanne?
I just was wondering, Eric, who is doing the minutes for various meetings right now? Or,
Marina will, I'm sure, do the minutes for this meeting.
okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item 11, liaison reports. Do we have anything to report?
I think CIP is meeting tomorrow, so I don't have anything for you from CIP. Right, Eric? We're meeting with you
Correct.
in your office.
Any others?
7?
7 PM.
7, all right.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to 12, board open discussion. Do we have anything further to discuss? Linda?
I'm not sure if this is where to fit this in, but I just thought I'd mention that AHM is having their online auction and they have some really nice stuff. If anybody's interested.
What's the website? ahm.org or something?
Yeah, and you can find it, but they've got some really nice gifts.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Anything else to discuss?
I think it's ahmyouth.org.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, AHM sounded too simple, right? That's what Google's for. Okay, hearing no other points of discussion, we'll move on to item 13, which is public speak. I don't think we have any members of the public on the board right now, or on the recording on the Zoom meeting, I should say.
No, we do not.
Okay. So last item is adjournment. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
I second it.
Joanne seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, none. The motion passes. All right, thank you, everybody. I know it wasn't a planned meeting, but I think it was good that we held